Shalom. This is the second in the series in the video about the class I'm teaching Maimonides on weekday afternoons. We covered the material I'm about to talk about in several weeks, but I'll summarize it here in one brief video. The second set of material that we covered was in the Book of Kings, Hilchot Melachim, chapters 11 and 12, which deal with Maimonides' view of the Messianic era. And in chapter 11, he begins by saying the King Messiah, Melech HaMashiach, will arise. So that's his 12th principle of belief, that the King Messiah will come. Now, one huge difference for Christians who are watching this is Jews don't believe, and there's no evidence that this Messiah is going to be God or the Son of God or anything else. Just a guy. Now, and then he says, and restore David's realm. So he's got to be from the Davidic dynasty. The Bible says it's an everlasting dynasty. And then he deals with the prophecies which seem to suggest, like Isaiah 11, that a wolf and a lamb will lie down together. Maimonides was a rationalist, and he says, don't suppose the King Messiah will perform any signs and wonders, create new things in the world, revive the dead, or similar acts. It is not so. In fact, he talks about the example of Bar Kokhba, who was backed by Rabbi Akiva as the Messiah in the 2nd century in a rebellion against Rome and died, and he said anybody who dies clearly can't be the Messiah. And then he says in law number 4 in that chapter, here's how you know if it's the Messiah. First of all, here's how you presumably know. If the king comes from the house of David, is a student of Torah, does good deeds, and in the spirit of the written and oral Torah, prevails upon all Israel to reinstate the Torah and follow its directions, and fights the battles of the Lord, presumably he's the Messiah. Now, how do you clinch it? Here's how you know for sure. If he has done these things, having overcome the enemy nations, rebuilt the sanctuary, the holy temple on its site, and gather the dispersed of Israel, then for sure he will certainly be the Messiah. If he's not done these things or been slain, it is certain he's not the one of whom the Bible is saying is the Messiah. So anybody who's died clearly can't be the Messiah or hasn't done these things. Now, he goes into further in chapter 12 into this whole notion of the supernatural metaphors the Bible uses, and he says that's what they are. Don't suppose in the Messianic days that any of the laws of the nature will cease to exist, or that some new creation will come into being. And he specifically points to Isaiah 11 and says that that's a metaphor, in Hebrew called a mashal. In the nimshal, the meaning of the parable won't become known to us until the Messianic era. Now, then he says, the sages have declared the only difference between the present world and the Messianic world is our present subjection to foreign powers. And in that same section, he goes into how in Judaism it's wrong to speculate the sequence of events or the timing. He says no person's in a position to know how that'll all take place, and in the prophet it's only mentioned vaguely. None of the sages have any more information about it. So don't deal with legendary topics like this. It's not essential to religion. Just wait and believe in the principle of things as we have explained. So he says in principle number 12 of verse 13, Anima amin be'amuna shlema, I believe with perfect faith, b'viat HaMashiach, and the coming of the Messiah, even though the Messiah tarry, I still believe. He says that's all you need to know, really. And then he said the purpose of the Messianic era is not to dominate other nations or rule over them, but simply be free to study Torah. Kind of like the idea of America, that to have religious freedom. And then, number 5, law 5 in chapter 12, he says this. In that era of the Messiah, there'll be no famine, no war, no envy, no strife. Prosperity will be plentiful. All kinds of luxuries will be available like the dust. And the universal preoccupation will be primarily to know the Lord. So that is Maimonides. That material took us several weeks to study, but that's it in brief. Section 2 of our course, Maimonides Mishneh Torah, that we have during weekdays. This one on the Messiah.